Hi, my name is Chris, aka the TPhGames, and today I want to have a look at one of the most anticipated games of the year 2022, Dark Souls 4, Elden Ring. I played so far around about 60 hours, and I would say I can give you a pretty good impression. This is more than just first impressions, I guess. It's almost like a review, even though I haven't completed the game yet, and more a critique of the game. I want to have a look at what the game does pretty well, but also at the things that the game maybe does not so well. The game got a lot of praise, and I want to check if the praise is justified for the game, at least in certain places. So that is what you can expect of this potentially quite long video here. I also should mention I play on PC using a PlayStation 5 controller, so this is the PC version. I don't have any experience with the console versions, can't comment on that, but can just maybe tell you what I heard so far about it. Anything else? Yeah, I bought the game myself, bought it for Steam, and let's have a look into the game so far. So I don't want to spoil too much, so I try to keep the spoilers down. I will only show you the tutorial boss, and maybe one field boss that's pretty close to the starting of the game, and else we might have a look into a later area too, just at the beginning of it, so no major spoilers here. Before we start, I want to have a look into the options menu, because that is for some people, especially on PC, always quite interesting to see. If you're not interested in the options menu, then I show you a time code and you can just skip ahead when we start with the actual gameplay. Create a new character, then we have a look at the beginning of the game there. So the options menu, as you can see here, is your basic Dark Souls or Sekiro options menu. I would say this is more on the Sekiro iteration already. And you see these options here. We have the toggle auto lock and the auto target options. I turn them off because they can screw you over. Like if your enemy dies and the camera just switches to the next target and it's maybe, I don't know, right or left of you, and the camera just turns around by 90 or 100 degrees all of a sudden, and you do a roll in this moment, you can roll into the abyss and fall to your death. So that is nothing you want to happen, and so a lot of people recommend turning this off, but it's also kind of practical if you have it on, so you have to decide for yourself. But pretty basic here. Also some camera options that we have. You find an interesting option called camera auto wall recovery. In my opinion, in Elden Ring they managed to improve the camera a bit, but Dark Souls always had some camera issues if you are close to walls, and that can be really annoying, and this game tries to make this a bit better, and it works to some degree, but it's still not perfect. It can still be quite annoying in combat, I have to admit, but I have to say, from all the Souls games, this has probably the best camera so far, so there's definitely an improvement we could see here. Still not ideal. Another option, here it's turned off. I will turn it on just for a point I want to make during the tutorial, which I find a bit annoying, the show tutorials. The HUD is by default on auto, so it mostly vanishes from the screen, and then when you are in combat it appears again. I like it when it's on all the time, so I put this on. For audio we have like all kinds of audio sliders. For Dark Souls I think it's enough, you don't need more than this, like one for voice, so when character and NPCs talking, or cutscenes, sound effects for just environmental noise, and music. There is more music than in other Souls games, like in Dark Souls 1 you only hear music, I think, in one area, a secret area, and a bit around the Firelink Shrine, and when you are on a boss fight. In this game, though, when you get into combat, there is a bit of music, and also in boss fight there's music, but also when you traverse the world, you often hear a bit of music depending on the region and so on. So a slight change, and I would say also that for the most part the soundtrack is more, I wouldn't say it's subtle, but it's not on the epicness level of previous Souls games, in my opinion. It's not bad though. It's just, I think, a slightly different. Like it's a mixture between, let's say, Dark Souls 1 or Dark Souls 3 or 2 or whatever. And Sekiro, not from the style, but how music works. It's also quite dynamic. It changes like from one thing to another when you're in a fight, and when you get out of a fight, there's also a transition for it, and so on. Quite interesting details that you can hear there with the music, but it's very subjective. I still like it a lot, though so far it feels more subtle, because I have some of the classic Dark Souls music in my head, but none of the Elden Ring music, except for the main menu music, because I heard it so often already. But yeah, there's that. Still, it's a good soundtrack, don't get me wrong. Display blood, yeah, there's some blood effects in the game. This time, no dismemberment or anything, but you can turn it off if you don't want it to. Like, I think these options are pretty standard. There's also an HDR option, which I currently have not, my HDR is not activated currently, but details. Cross-region play, like there's also a multiplayer option inside the game, where you can also set a password and also group passwords. I will show it to you in a moment. Controls. Here in this game, the biggest change is, as in Sekiro, the game is in dire need of jumping. And jumping in previous games was always by you had to hold B or triangle, not triangle, circle, and to run. And then if you press down the one of the analog sticks, or in Dark Souls 1 you had to double tap B again, then you would jump. This game now has a dedicated jump button, and it has to be somewhere, and it's where by default it is actually, maybe I can reset the default. You see now it's on A, and your use button is now on Y or X, and this is Y is triangle. So in case you use a PlayStation controller, quite nice to see here at the side though. I personally, it's just like my own preference, I have to switch the jump button to Y and the use button to A. So basically switch these two buttons. So I jump here and use, again, as it's in all Souls games, on the A button. I like this more, especially this allows me to jump easier while running, but as said, it's just a minor preference. You can, as you see, change the controls of your controller. Works pretty well. Much easier, or it's much better in that regard than, like, I don't know, Dark Souls 1 Prepare to Die edition or something like that. Same with keyboard. There's no secondary keyboard settings, or yeah, there's no primary and secondary keyboard thing you can set up. So just have one, but for Dark Souls it's enough. Still, there are a lot of buttons. You can also have like button combinations, as you can see there at the side. It seems. Haven't played with mouse and keyboard though, can't comment on how that works. Then the game has a borderless window mode, as Sekiro. I think Sekiro was the first FromSoft game that also appeared on PC that had a borderless window mode. So Dark Souls 2 I always have to play in windowed, which is a bit annoying. While streaming and tabbing out, game minimizes then when you play full screen, so you need a windowed mode or borderless windowed one. And that is, yeah, pretty annoying if you have to play windowed. You get used to it. This game though has a borderless window mode. Awesome. As far as I know, I don't have a widescreen, ultra widescreen monitor. This game does not support, for whatever reason, ultra widescreen resolutions. It's really strange in my opinion. Should be a thing. You also don't see frame rate settings in this setup here, and I can't tell you why not. The game is locked to 60 for whatever reason, so you can't get more than 60 FPS, even if you have like a 140 Hertz monitor or 160 or whatever refresh rate you have on your monitor. The game is locked to 60 and nothing you can do against it. There's a mod that unlocks it though, but I don't know how this interacts with online play. There's also like an anti-cheat program now in it and so on. So I would be careful with modding and playing online then. Maybe then just play offline or so, just for safety's sake. Can't comment really on that. I haven't tried that out, but vanilla Elden Ring is locked to 60, which is unfortunate in my opinion. And we will also briefly talk about, you probably have heard about the technical state the game is in. We will briefly talk about that too. Else the options here, not much to change. I have to put it for recording on medium, I think, because it helps out with the frame rate issues that the game sadly has quite a bit. So let's jump into the game, and then we will probably see stuff. You can see stuff yourself. So for demonstration's sake, I just create a new character. We go to we click on new game, and if you don't know the Souls series, you should know that this is like your starting class, and the starting class is just for the start. You can pick whatever character you want and level it however you want. You can start as, I don't know, a vagabond and then make a mage out of it, or you can start a mage and play as a, I don't know, axe-swinging tank warrior. Like, you can do this. You get like 100, or let's say 90 level ups in this game, even more if you want. Like, you can go fast, far past level 100 if you want. And for every level up you get 1 skill point, and you don't get additional skills or talents or anything like this. There are skills in the game, but they are tied to the weapon, not to your character. And there are only stat requirements for weapon or something. That's basically all there is. So what you mainly change by leveling in this game are your stats, and these are just your base stats. And you can, let's say, if this character has 9 intelligence, if I would just now start pumping every level up into intelligence, I could also bring him to 60 intelligence and play a mage with him. Totally possible. Another thing that the start classes define is what equipment you have at the start, but you can find all the other equipments you see here, I assume, in the world too. Like, it would be unusual if there would be something you can't find in the world. If you want to do a level 1 run, you start with the Wretch, previously called Deprived, and that's very basic, but has every stat on 10, so it's a good baseline if you don't want where to go yet, and you can just start from there. It's not bad starting with one of those, and you find weapons relatively fast, but we also come to that. So you have to know where to search them. So it's maybe something more for veterans or players who know at least the beginning of the game a bit better. There's definitely that. For the purpose of this first impression video, I start with a vagabond. Type A, type B is just male and female. I just select something somewhat randomly, and yeah. Enter name. Typing with one hand is also not that easy. It's called TPhGames. And yeah, you can change your looks of your character. There are predefined sets. You can also go onto detail appearance and change your body a bit. Like, I don't know, make the arms really beefed up or not. And so on and so forth. You can change body hair. There's also face. Like, you have a lot of detailed face options. You can change like the hairstyle for your character. You have a lot of options there. You can make beards, eye color, the form of your face. There's also the similar face functionality that maybe gives you an idea what you can do with the faces. This is just like auto-generated with the settings you can change yourself. I won't change anything here because I just want to move on and start with the game already. So yeah, we keep it like this. Only one thing I have to change is the keepsake. So there are multiple things you can change, you can select here for beginners. I would say the Crimson Amber Amulet or the Fanged Imp Ashes, even though it's not really needed, but are probably the beginner things. Maybe also the Golden Seed, which is what I will select. But you can find all these other things in the game itself. Stone Sword keys are used to open, let's call them optional dungeons, and to open them you need to use a key for them. There are also dungeons where you don't need keys, so it's not like every dungeon needs a key or something, but there are a few of them, usually behind, I show it to you, a fog gate. That's how you recognize those, and you can't pass the fog gate, you have to use a key for it, and then it vanishes, and you can enter it. And you find these stone sword keys in the world itself. You start here with 2 of them, I think, and could do this too if you have certain in mind and want to get to those early or so on. I don't know. Might be something for special strats. I will go with, I don't know, the Golden Seed, I guess. Show you what it does in a moment. Where we find a second one, and then I can use that too. Okay, so I just click on finish, and we start with the tutorial area, which we load in now. there I can maybe show you a bit of the basic controls and how this game might work or not. I've also installed it on my SSD, so the loading times should be decently fast. And now the first change is the intro cutscene. Remember Demon Souls and Dark Souls? It had these awesome... Demon Souls even a pre-rendered cutscene at the beginning. In this game, it is not pre-rendered, but still images and a narrator. Like, the narrator is a classic in the Souls series, but
The great Elden Ring.
the stills are kind of new, but I think it's just a deliberate decision to tell the intro like this. And I just skip it here, but the other cutscenes in the game are not stills. They are, again, these in-engine cutscenes that you know from Dark Souls. So they are still there. Or from other FromSoft titles like Sekiro. They are still there, but you don't have like these epic pre-rendered cutscene, which is a bit unusual, but I think it's just a stylistic choice here. You see, maybe you don't see it, but I have a fat roll here. So we'll just... And here we have the thing. The auto popping up menu tutorial hints. That is annoying. You can, if you want to see them, you can just click on menu explanation and they pop up again. So it's not like they just appear once. You can review them if you want. I just remove this halberd here and we pick out our first item so we can write a message if we would want to. And Aragon style, we just open the door here. Well, it's actually Dark Souls style. It's pretty Dark Souls to open these doors slowly. A heavy door. And we could even write a message, wrong button, but you see another little hint that you have to put away. We can actually put a marker here. Or maybe we don't see it. Let's do it maybe like this. You know, I'm a bit surprised. To be honest, you can see these markers on the map, and that there is a map is something really new. And now you see it. Here it is. Let's write a message. I wanted to demonstrate this too. Nothing has really changed here. You can, I don't know, just say, I don't know, phrases, good luck or something to people. You press triangle or Y. You can also add, for example, another phrase to it or a gesture or something. So there are options for it. And yeah, you can write messages and other players can read it. Most of the messages are just absolutely trolling. See, here's our little message with the new ring gesture. Almost fell down there. That was kind of close. And yeah, you can see I can now jump easily. And I jump pretty high. Look at this. You can also do attacks from this, like the classic jump attack that we know from the other games. As now you have to actually jump and press the attack button. And there are all kinds of things. And it's kind of important to use the jump attacks from time to time. They stagger quite heavily if you hit an enemy with it. So the game also suggests using it at times. You see, I also don't use stamina, but this is only because I'm not in combat. That's a new feature because this map is massive. We will see that in a moment. And you need to run quite a lot. As a result, being able to traverse with your sprinting by holding down circle or B is required quite a lot. And yeah, that helps traversing the area, don't consuming too much stamina. You can also test out your weapon a bit. But the biggest change is definitely the dedicated jump now that you can use to jump up on things. Like that was always a pain in previous Souls games. There are limits to it, but you can see you can jump quite high now and explore a bit. So yeah, let's just continue. It's basically not much has changed. So far the game is pretty much Dark Souls 3. If you would know the differences, you wouldn't even notice. And here's our first little boss friend. Let me see how good I can beat it. Ouch. Let's focus here for a moment. Really hard to comment. And I'm dead. Yeah, strange. You still can move for a moment, but then the screen just got black. But my HP just went to 0. And for people who have played Demon's Souls already, this is basically one really challenging boss that is far too strong, and you don't have any you don't have healing options and so on. So it's basically intended for you to die. You saw all these bloodstains at the beginning. Most people just jump into the cliff directly just to skip it and move on with their lives. Not wasting too much time on this early boss, and you can defeat it, and the reward for it is okay-ish, I would say. Well, maybe it's even kind of nice, but probably too much of a hassle to really try, so most people don't do this. Here we see the classic mentioned in-engine or in-game graphics cutscenes that we have with awesome cinematography, and you have some dialogue in it. Pretty classic Dark Souls cutscenes. Also, Torrent, awesome name for a horse. But yeah, let me skip the cutscenes. I don't want to spoil too much here. We'll also skip the dialogues from now on, so you don't have to worry too much about it. Only thing I just want to mention is you sometimes find these ghosts that give you mysterious notes about maybe the lore and also some hints. And yeah, they're not voiced for whatever reason. Maybe like all the other NPCs are voiced. Brave Tarnish takes a plunge. Oh, I just skipped the line. Let's do it again. Of learning and remembrance, recall the arts of war and your warrior's blood. But it's not voiced. All the other NPCs are voiced though, and yeah, it's kind of strange. Here we take the plunge and do the tutorial area really quick. And we find a site of grace. And can we... Yeah. The game, you see I'm still in the role, so the game actually pauses when these pop up. And this is very reminiscent of Sekiro. That had the same, and I criticized this in my Sekiro critique too. That I hate when, especially at the beginning, these pop-ups just pop up all the time and disturb the flow of the game. Here it's at least mostly only popping up in the tutorial area. You could say, yeah, it's kind of okay. But I still find it annoying, so not gonna lie. Like this. Now I missed my swing here, because the game just paused for a moment. And again, we have to dodge. And yeah, you see very slow attacks, very delayed, and enemies having delayed attacks in this game will be a common theme. We will talk about this later. You also already saw it with the other boss. It had some attacks, and here another message. The materials message. Awesome. You can now collect crafting materials. We come to that later too. And yeah, so these tutorials I find a bit annoying, I have to say. Especially when they happen mid-combat or so. Backstab, still available. Can't believe that this guy survived. Can I throw something? You know what? Screw that guy. But you see, no falling damage. We could just take his fruit. Hope he didn't drop anything, so we have to return again. No, he didn't. So much to rushing through the game here. You can also heal with the Estus Flask, now called Crimson Tears Flask, or Flask of Crimson Tears. And it is very fascinating. Another awesome message here. Interrupting our running attack. And yeah, it also now tells us about another mechanic from Sekiro. You can crouch. Like in Dark Souls 3, if you wanted to sneak up upon, or in Dark Souls 1 even, you could just walk very slowly towards him and then just hit him. In Sekiro, they made crouching, and now you are silence. You can even hold circle for crouching faster, and the enemies won't really notice you. Like, it's not a stealth game or anything, it's just like to sneak behind an enemy or past enemies, therefore it's kind of helpful. But you see this guy here noticed us if you're just in front of it, but it's also supposed to notice us. And yeah, we just move on with our lives. Here another message, which is an interesting mechanic now. Usually you spawn at the bonfire, here called Site of Grace. We saw it at the beginning. And these statues now are additional checkpoints. So when you die, the game asks you if you want to spawn at this statue or at the last bonfire, or the Site of Grace. You can select between. You can start here. Your stuff is also refilled. It's basically bonfire. You can't rest here and change stuff though, but it prevents you from walking too far to the boss fog gate, which are now always yellow. So there's a little change there. When you see a yellow fog gate, you know it has to do with a boss, or you have to encounter a boss after beyond that. And these statues just let you respawn close to it. I have to admit, though, later in the game, they seem to have forgotten a bit that these statues exist. And as a result, you have to walk later in the game quite a bit again. So here you saw, like, I just killed this boss really fast with like a jumping attack that staggered him, and then you could do the front step that also existed in Dark Souls 2 already. But here it's a quite prominent mechanic, and we have several ways to trigger it, I think. So it's often easier to trigger. But this boss is a really bad tutorial boss. My first big criticism. If you compare this to Dark Souls 1, to Dark Souls 3's Judex Gundyr, the first boss in the game, the tutorial boss, he's like really an awesome boss. Like, he looks cool, he has cool attacks, he has a second phase, he teaches you everything you have to know. He's also quite tough for a tutorial boss already, and in my opinion, one of the best tutorial bosses in the complete Souls series. This is pretty lame, I have to admit. Like, huge disappointment in the first boss. This is just a normal enemy in the world. It's just not really a boss. And this brings us already to like a criticism that maybe I pick up in a moment, because let me just demonstrate you the world stuff. But you also saw inside the boss fight there was also a tutorial message, which is just unnecessary in my opinion. Just place the tutorial message in front of the fog gate, not inside the fight. I don't like that. Even though nothing really happened so far, but I kind of interrupts. Like, so strange that the game is paused. Like, Dark Souls is a game you can't pause. Dark Souls was always a game that didn't flood you with stupid tutorial messages. That, like, when Demon Souls came out, it was in a time when games almost played themselves. Like, remember this? I think it was for one of the Wii Super Mario games for Wii. There was the so-called Super Guide, where the game basically played itself when you were stuck, and you pressed the button. And yeah, then Demon Souls came, and it didn't tell you anything. Just the basic controls. In the stats menu, I think some of the stats weren't even properly named. You just had this mystical symbol in front of it, though it was another place where they were named. And you had to figure out so many things. World tendency was not explained, and so on. And now this game comes, and you walk 5 meters, and you get a tutorial message. Like, let's get another one. We just go down here, and oh, a tutorial message. Let me explain you this mechanic in detail. Like, I find it a bit annoying, to be honest, and that is why I will deactivate this from now on. But you get the point, and if we would encounter other mechanics, the game would explain to you. Make it more accessible. Which is... Oh, my message was ready, just wanted... What was its sound? It makes it more accessible, which is, I think, good, but I feel like it's not done too elegantly with this. But as said, if you want to reread a message while they are turned off, you can go to this menu here, to your inventory, and at the last point of it, really far at the end, you see all the messages again. So if you would want to read the summoning pole message, or the tutorial hint again, we could do this here. In the menus, you can also press the select button or whatever it's called now, and click on menu explanation and see these explanations again. There's also an explanation thing for stats that is in the game since Dark Souls 1, interestingly, that you can go into, I don't know, the stats screen and press select and say explanation, and then it says what these stats do. We'll talk about this also in a moment. Let me sit down here at the bonfire and let me see how we might progress from here. First of all, we need, of course, crafting materials. We want to talk a bit about crafting in a moment. And yeah, here you see it, the open world. And it's really beautiful. I really love the art style of the game, and it does it really well. I would also say that this starting area here of this game is really good. Like, it's a really good open world area in my opinion. I can already spoil it. And overall, I really, really like the game. I have a hard time putting it down. And it's definitely a game of the year contender. But there are a lot of positive things and a lot of things the game does well. It looks well. Here in the beginning area, you have a lot of great content that you can find. And even if you come back after 10, 20, 30 hours of play, back to this area and explore it a bit further, you might find something that you have not seen before while you originally tried to complete this area. And that is pretty awesome. Like, they put in a lot of content, and I think content-wise, this area here is pretty strong at the beginning. There's some others, but I have to admit, if you come later into the later areas and progress through the game, you definitely notice that there is a price to pay for making Dark Souls an open world game and filling it with content. And then suddenly the areas are not that interesting anymore, and you see that a lot of stuff is really repeating itself a bit. Like the dungeons you find, like if you have cleared 5 of 6 cave dungeons already, or catacombs or something like this, let me put it that way. If you have seen one catacomb, you have seen them all, basically. They all use the same assets for the most part, and not all of them, but most, and work pretty similar. You have to find a lever, and then a door opens, and you have a boss at the end. It gives you some loot, sometimes pretty good stuff, sometimes not so good stuff, and you then just move on. And there's some really good dungeons that are completely different than any other dungeon in the game, but there are also some dungeons that are not so great. I also talked about a detail which I just want to show you really quick, because that should be possible. By just loading. As you can see, we can fast travel from everywhere when we are not in combat, and I talked about the fog gate. So this is the fog gate where you need one of the keys for. You see the statue here. It says if you activate it, you need a stone sword key. I forgot to mention that. So yeah, let's just move back. And I want to dive a bit into the basic gameplay loop of the game of the open world now. Just drink something really quick here. Doing this live is... I have to do a lot of talking, so also I need to drink a bit. Yeah, here we see a pretty interesting area already. And you see this dude there on the horse. Is he friendly or not? Well, I can at least lock into him. That's usually a sign that he's not a friend. And you notice, oh, and we got a boss bar. And suddenly combat's going, and he starts swinging his mighty axe at me. And I'm not a fan of that. He also potentially does a lot of damage when he would hit us, but our insane dodge skills, of course, make it very hard for him to hit us. And I'm not sure if I can beat him, probably not, but just want to show the point what you can encounter here. That was cheating. Was just a half hit. And now you see he does actually quite some damage. Quite some damage. But you also see some frame drops and micro stutters here and there, like that one. And that is annoying, I have to admit. that here we are very fast at the technical side of things. And it's really unfortunate to see like a beautiful, gorgeous game with an awesome art style. And here we die finally. Was a pretty decent try though, I have to admit. But yeah, you see, you can beat him if you want, if you put in the tries, if you grind his moveset a bit. There are also ways to make him easier though, we might come to that too. And that's pretty cool, like you walk, explore the area, and then you find like a boss, and not all the bosses you find are this strong. Like this guy is deliberately placed here to be like a really tough challenge for the beginning. And you will most likely die pretty quick against this guy. But you don't have to fight him. You could also just go into this direction, go somewhere completely else, go here. For the sake of this video, I have like a specific route I want to show here. And we just move past him now. And don't fight him. I also forgot to reallocate my Estus though, but... Yeah, so now we definitely have the option to avoid him. We can maybe sneak here through the bushes and don't have to worry about him too much. When we don't come further, we can jump and find all kinds of interesting places, like this ruin here of, I assume, a church with somebody hanging there. So the game is definitely, again, even though it looks very colorful, with the gigantic yellow glowing tree in the background, it still is a pretty dark world, I have to admit. So here we find our second site of grace. We can also maybe rest here for a short moment and get something pretty essential. As said at the beginning, I had a golden seed, which we now use, and we get an additional Estus. So it's an Estus shard. And we can also, which like the blue flask is for FP or mana basically, and we don't need that much. I would prefer an additional healing flask, so we take 0 of those and 5 of those instead. And now we have 5 flasks at the beginning, which is quite decent. But you see, we can't level up yet. We come to that too. And yeah, basically this is how it works. You walk. You see maybe strong enemies, you pass them, you maybe see a beatable boss, you kill him, continue, you find new sites of graces, then you find interesting points of interest like this here, find dungeons and so on. We just get this item here, we got a like nice smithing stone. And we find this NPC here. And it's a merchant. It is Kale, and he sells stuff. There's one thing I want to show for demonstration's sake here. We buy this here, the crafting kit, and we buy a torch. And for the rest, we could either save it, or just spend it for some throwing knives or so. Here. And yeah, then we just now have the crafting menu. Let me just demonstrate crafting really quick. You need like materials like this here. You need these berries. It also says where you find them, but sometimes it doesn't really. And then you really have to search for them, which I find a bit annoying. Like I think the crafting system works, but it's definitely, now I just crafted something. It works, I think, only out of combat. It's nothing too unusual. Some crafting components though, like this here, need 3 materials though. And here it says, often carried by demi-humans. So you have to assume, okay, I just have to now farm demi-humans to get those strings. Cool. I have to admit that's not that cool. I would prefer if... Like, it has the advantage that you can just collect everything on your way. And when you need it, you can craft it on the fly, on the going. You don't need to be near a site of grace. You can do it everywhere, just out of combat. And you don't have to buy it. I personally would prefer if you could also buy a lot of stuff that you often can't buy, so far at least, as I can tell. For example, like the pendant of this game that was the antidote, the purple moss clumps in previous games. You can craft them, but I have not seen that you can really buy them at a merchant. Maybe there is one merchant that has them, but on this gigantic map, and it's just a really, really small fraction of the map that we see here, and it's not fully uncovered yet. On this gigantic map, you have like, I don't know how many, 40 plus, or I don't know how many merchants that you meet, and all of them look like him, just maybe slightly different. So it's the Sekiro approach of the merchant, which is a bit unfortunate in my opinion. And you have to memorize who sells what. Most of them sell arrows though, so you can buy normal arrows at least for 20 runes are they now called. Previous games it was souls. And I would just prefer if you could just had a few merchants where in the hub or whatever where you just could buy everything. There is a merchant in the hub where you can buy a lot of stuff, even some crafting components that are probably annoying to get, like thin bones. Maybe we just move on while I'm talking. Like, I would have to kill one of these poor sheep here to get thin bones. And there they are. And see, they do the somersaulting. That's so cute in my opinion, the sheeps, when they are afraid. Really cute. So somersaulting sheep is definitely a big plus point in this game. And then you just progress. You kill these soldiers. You find crafting material, like some weird excrements. And then you have it should you ever need it. You have to find books that have the recipes in them for the crafting stuff. And yeah, then you just progress through the world. This is a basic gameplay loop of this. Speaking of the NPC that we just saw a moment ago, a big problem is that the world is really, really big. And as a result, you have the problem that they repeat, or not repeat, but yeah, these merchants basically repeat. They are the same. Not this one here. Kale has at least some dialogue options. There's also like a small quest distantly tied to him. So he's one of the more interesting merchants that you find in the game. But all the others, sometimes they don't even have like a dialogue option or anything. Like just just a hello line and a goodbye line. And that's really a bit unfortunate in my opinion. All the other merchants in Dark Souls 1, for example, they had like a talk option and you could just talk to them. They sometimes gave you little hints or some little information about the world and its lore, which I always found pretty cool. But most of them don't have that. They have just a buy and a sell button and a leave button. That's it. That I find a bit unfortunate, and I have to admit, the FromSoft games did this much, much better in the past, sadly. Like, it's always difficult if you know that this company has done this particular element much, much better in the past. And as a result, you feel like, okay, why did they reduce, let's call it, the quality of this element? It's not like there are no great NPCs in this game. There are some pretty awesome NPCs and also some awesome quest lines in the game already, but still a lot of NPCs are also a bit generic in my opinion, especially the merchants. And this is, I said at the beginning, there is a price to pay to have to make Dark Souls into an open world game and fill it with content. And one of the prizes was definitely that, for example, these merchants are not very interesting characters, except for maybe Kali at the beginning, which gives you like a bit of information about himself, his culture, and also about some other stuff that you can learn from him. Kind of interesting. Yeah, and then you just move on through the world, like I just did, and you find a cave like this here, and you just enter it. And these caves are always, especially if there's the site of grace, like this bonfire here, in it, they're always like little dungeons. And you can, maybe I should equip my new torch. And you can explore them, and then there are enemies inside, and there's also always a boss at the end. So I won't show you this dungeon though, I just... You get the point how this works. And you explore it, you get an item at the end after fighting the boss. You find some loot on the way to the boss. Pretty awesome. But these caves also You find multiple of those, and some of them are very, very similar. And then at some point, you also see similar bosses. Like, not similar bosses, the same boss. And you have to fight him in another cave too. And then it becomes a bit unfortunate. That is not the case here in the early area, where every boss is still unique. But in later areas, sadly, you notice that there is some boss reuse. And reusing bosses and also making some enemies a bit stronger that you know from the normal world as normal world enemies suddenly are bosses in those arenas. That was always a thing in Dark Souls, but it is very prominent, sadly, in Elden Ring, which is a huge minus. If we compare this to Dark Souls 3, for example, or maybe even Bloodborne, there was very little reuse of enemies. Like, Dark Souls 3 only reused, if I remember correctly, just one boss, and the refight was vastly different. Here we have a small cutscene, maybe I skip it in a moment, but here we get the level up feature, and suddenly this character from the first cutscene appears. You've seen her on the horse, and she tells us awesome things, and we just skip the cutscene here, just don't want to roll too much, and let me skip through the dialogue real quick. She gives us some background information. We accept her offer, and she gives us the spectral steed whistle, which allows us to call the horse. Also, we see that the time just changed to night, interestingly. And the spectral steed is called Torrent, which is a pretty cool name for a horse, I think.
Let my hand rest upon you. For bottom, share them with me.
And here we can level up. In theory, I have found this shard here, which gives us 400 souls, so I can show you a level up too. And yeah, now we can level up at every bonfire. Even though she is not sitting next to it, it kind of works. Interesting detail about the stats here. So we see endurance and vigor, but we don't see vitality. And in Dark Souls 1, stamina and equip load was tied to one stat called endurance. And this is back in Elden Ring. In Dark Souls 2 they split it up because it was really strong stat. And it's also pretty strong here, I guess. But it's back to where it was before. It's kind of an interesting change that they, in Dark Souls 1 and in Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 3, in both games they split this stat into two different stats, and now they recombined it. Therefore, I think level progression, I wouldn't say it's slower, but the game is so big. It's slower to some degree, but the game is just so massive that you have a lot of time leveling up, so you still get to a pretty high level. It's strange to explain. It also seems to level the stats much higher, the soft caps are much higher than it was in previous games, but that's just a detail. I just level strength because it doesn't matter too much for this demonstration here. And we got our first little level up here. So I was talking about the price to pay and the open world, and you definitely noticed when I went through this forest and found the cave and found all the materials and killed like 4 soldiers or so, it was a pretty slow pacing how this stuff works. You can also read messages and also rate them. And now we have like this campsite here with soldiers guarding something. And these and the other points of interest often feel then suddenly much faster paced again. And Dark Souls never had really a fast pacing, to be honest, or maybe in boss fights, but while exploring. But this game has a really slow pacing, all things considered. And in these campments or points of interest and little dungeons, suddenly the game plays much more like a classical Souls game again. Even though we are still here out in the open world in this case. So now we can just sneak around and we find some other enemies. And now we could wait for him to get close to us and, I don't know, sneak around or so. They're also very bad at their job. They don't see us sneaking here. Well, he does at least. We have this dude now. And we have this dude now. But you see, suddenly things are changing because of the frequency of enemies, and yeah, suddenly we have some action that happening. You also hear the music in the background, which is unusual. Now it's vanished again. So the dynamic music use is also a bit unusual. We also see this enemy there with a big shield and so on. And it's kind of cool at the beginning. Like I said, the beginning is pretty strong of the game. And what definitely is noticeable though is also I maybe should use Mr. Horse, right? What's definitely noticeable is that the enemies also repeat a lot. Like, the enemy variety is really strong at the beginning, and really, there are a lot of different enemies, but later in the game you notice that you fight the same enemies over and over again. Like, just different colors, a bit stronger, but it's still a big dude with a spear and a shield, or a big dude with a sword, a big dude with a shield and a sword. It's sadly very, very similar to later stuff. Also a feature here, you have the pouch, which something like this existed, I think, even in Bloodborne. I think Bloodborne introduced it. That was below the menu. Here you have now faster access to it. If I hold down, in my case, it's the X button, and standard, or the A button. Standard, it would be Y or triangle. I can just hold this and press to the side, and then I would the digipad to the right, and I just summon my horse now, which has a double jump, which is absolutely amazing. Also, here's another side of grace for whatever reason. But you see how basically how this works. Now here we have the slower pacing again of the open world. That is very common, and you can also run past many enemies. But with the horse now you can make traversing the area a bit faster. Now we can, I know, explore this these ruins here a tiny bit and see where this might bring us. He almost saw us, so you see the stealth element in this game is quite limited. Here we have one of these scouts. You can destroy them if you manage to hit him. And then you get a rune. Rune is basically like soul of a lost soldier or something. So like a little thing. No idea where he is going. So we can just backstab him. I said these people are terrible at their job. And yeah, we can sneak around. We don't wanna really fight with the wolves. He also does not really see us, which is kind of funny. He wants to call for help. We can't allow him that. But yeah, you basically see how this here works. And now we got seen. We just call our horse and we're out of here. And you could also just ignore this and play it far less, I don't know, far less careful than I just did. You can just rush with the horse. There's also even combat from horse. And then you can maybe just rush down, find like a treasure chest. And this is an interesting one because it contains an Ash of War, the Storm Stomp, and a whetstone knife. So pretty good loot. You should get this early on. Because we also found the map now. You see now a detailed map of this if you opened it. And the Ashes of War basically allow us, maybe let me demonstrate, so you can attack with R1 to the right side, with L1 to the left side, with a blocking button. Let me just get off my horse really quick. There are weapon arts, as they were called in Dark Souls 3. See? Still there. And you can find these Ashes of War that I just found. And this basically, if you find a certain NPC, he is able to replace the weapon art of a weapon that you currently have and just switch it out. Also, the imbuing or infusing your weapon feature is tied to that detail. As said, these people are terrible at their job. And yeah, that is a very interesting a little mechanic, which I like a lot. Like, this really expands that you can change the weapon art here. It's called now skill of your weapon. So your special attack of that each weapon has. You have to hold it two-handed. Speaking of two-handing your weapon, there is... You can do this here too, one-handed or two-handed. You can even two-hand your shield and so on, but it's a bit different. Now you have to hold Y or triangle, in my case X, or the X button on the PlayStation pad, because I switched the buttons, and then press the attack button or the block button if you want it the other way around. This took me a time to really figure out, to be honest, because that's very different from how we know it from other games. So just for people curious about this. I also want to show you another little new mechanic. And we come back to this place in a moment. Let me just teleport back to the church. Because now we see a new NPC here. And it's also one of the cooler NPCs in the game.
I am the witch Renna. I'd heard tell of a tarnished hurtling about atop a spectral steed. And upon looking into the matter, the talk I surmise is of thee. Thou art possessed of the power, no? To call forth a spectral steed named Torrent.
So yeah, we have Torrent, and he gives us the these ashes here. And with this, you are able to call these ashes that also exist, and these are basically summons. So you can summon 3 wolves here with this. If you had the other starting item is also an ash, and it would allow you to...
I doubt we shall again meet. But all the same, learn well the lands between. How long will it be, I wonder, before the tarnished tire of obeisance to the 2 fingers?
And she just vanishes. Yeah, while we had the merchant...
You're back.
Here you see you could talk about this character, and he has like this little ask about, and then it's gone, and now we can't talk to him, so we can't let him repeat the line. Also a detail I find a bit unfortunate, that you can't just press the talk button and just goes through his lines again, that I liked in the previous Souls games, in case you just missed something. Crafting wise, by this pot here, I might... By accident collected a mushroom. We can craft... Yeah, I had one. We can now also craft a firebomb. You need these cracked pots for those, and for every cracked pot you can basically get an additional firebomb. That's also a bit unusual that it's like this. So if I throw this, it's gone. I have 0, but I can craft again one. We don't need an additional cracked pot. We only now need these materials here. Now I have one thing again. Can't craft inside of combat, as said. There's a really strange element with these ashes here. As you can see, they are now grayed out. I can't use them, which is a bit unusual. Can't use them. Can't use them. And now I can use them. Pretty strange, isn't it? I find this a bit unelegant, in my opinion. I know that FromSoft has some really elegant designs and solutions, but this is basically just an UI element that seems pretty random. Like, why can't I summon them here, but here? It's just, it makes no sense, right? And it's only just this icon that looks like the door of Durin that basically makes a difference. Like, there's no visual indicator on the world, on the map or anything, why I shouldn't be able to do this here, but I'm able to summon it here. It's, in my opinion, a bit stupid. You can't do this all the time. There are areas where you can't summon these wolves, and there are areas where you can. Same with the horse. There are also no horse areas. That makes, of course, sense because it would basically circumvent how a level is designed, because the horse can high jump, jump higher, and so on. But here, for me, this makes very little sense. However, the weird thing, I think, is if I move further again, I think they... See, I can only summon them in this little area here. I don't know why that is. It makes for me very little sense, to be honest, why it's designed like this. Maybe I just show you the summon really quick. There's the UI element. You also see the life bars of the wolves at the side. So there's huge UI involvement here. In my opinion, not really ideal. In my opinion, it should be different. If I now run out of the summoning area again, you see that they will start glowing and then they just disappear because we are outside the area for it. See, now they just vanish for no apparent reason. It's really strange. Oh, we got a new coat, like a piece of armor. Nice. But yeah, that's an element. And this element you can use in boss fights most of the time. I think pretty much always. And they make bosses a lot easier. So if I would want to... Now we have the horse. We have one level up, a horse, and these summon things. And if we would now, for example, go back to the first place and fight this guy on the horse again, you will notice that he becomes, I wouldn't say trivial, he's still pretty strong, and it's not like it's absolute easy mode with those. But they definitely make, in combination with all of this stuff, easier. And against this boss here, or this field boss, let's call him that way, things suddenly become a lot easier. And also now the wolves attack him, and ouch. That eye, and he just one-shotted my horse. Maybe we can come out of this area. You also see the frame issues now. And another topic I should maybe mention there for a moment. Like, the game is beautiful, but the graphic fidelity of the game is, in my opinion, not really that high. Like, it's definitely there. Ouch. But it's not that high that the game should eat that many resources. I have a pretty decent system. And we're dead. So yeah, but you see, if I wouldn't have screwed up there so much, and we probably would have beaten him. But I don't want to show what he drops, and so that's good that we died here. But you can beat him with this now much easier, and the struggle is much smaller as a result. The horse combat works also fairly well. But however, the frame issues definitely make things annoying. And this is mainly in this area here when you fight them. And over there in this area, I had very little frame issues. Like, going to this direction is the 60 FPS direction. Going down there suddenly is the I have weird stutters, and the frame rate jumps from 60 down to 30, down to 25, up to 50 again. It's really inconsistent, and I hope it's still not fixed. I hope that FromSoft will fix it. Bandai Namco already acknowledged that there is an issue and they're working on it. So there will be definitely an upgrade to this. But yeah, this is basically your classic gameplay loop, and this also makes the game more accessible. Like, you have this element. Maybe we should return to the other thing here again to make my next point. You don't have to use those summons. Like, summoning NPCs was always... Oh, this is the wrong... Yeah, whatever. The wrong cave. and the wrong side of grace. We also demonstrate the horse combat a bit. See, that's how it works. And here we can try it now with the left side attack. Left side attack. So that's basically it. Does he drop? Some bolts. Awesome. Yeah, but it's very unfortunate that like the game doesn't look as beautiful as, for example, Demon's Souls remake on the PlayStation 5, where the graphic fidelity, in my opinion, is even higher than here. Of course, it has the open world, and open world is always very taxing for computers and consoles, but in my opinion, it's very unfortunate that the game has these amount of stutters when you walk through the world. That is just not... Some compared to Cyberpunk, I know that the horse can also get invisible. I never had this bug yet, but some people... I saw it in some streams already, so it's definitely there. But it's definitely not on the level of Cyberpunk's terrible technical issues at start. It's... In that regard, the game is much advanced. Here we also... Can we maybe move? Thank you. And this game, this regard, the game is much better when it comes to this stuff. So on the technical side, it's better, but it still should not be in a released version of such a big release here that the game has so many performance issues. That is, in my opinion, highly unnecessary. I also found like another golden seed here, and you saw this the item I just picked up. It had this it wasn't white, the beam of showing that there's an item, but it was like slightly violet or bluish or whatever, and it shows like it's a special item. And every time you see one of these trees and see an item, you know it's a seed. There are some other locations where you know, okay, it's this item when you find it there. And you also notice that some of the more interesting items have different colors. This, in my opinion, takes a bit away, and now I can return to the point that I stopped making a moment ago. Takes a bit away from the like experience getting cool loot, like the surprise of loot. Like you find a piece of loot somewhere, and you know, yeah, it will be to 99.99% not be a golden seed. Like you will never find it if it's not one. If you don't see this tree. This tree spoils the loot basically already. I'm not the hugest fan. I mean, in Souls, this always existed in the form of crystal lizard. You know, when you kill those, you also get like crafting material always, and you know what you would get. And often it was also not randomized, so it was only partially randomized. It was kind of the exception. Of course, if you know the game well, you always know what you get. But on your first playthrough, if you find like a corpse, and there is loot in it. Maybe I can find another one somewhere here. I'm not sure if it's up there on this one or on the other side. Can't remember. But let's just pass a bit while I continue my thought here. You find this loot, and it's not a surprise. And this makes the game... you also have now a compass and a map and so on. On the map you can set markers and say, I don't know, here is like a certain plant or so, and you can mark it on the map. You can put these markers which you see. The other marker is you see, I don't see it just yet on the map. Probably have to move a bit further here in this. Yeah, now we see the marker too. And for example, here we see like... See, this has a little different glow than some other items. And it's a strength, not crystal tier. Pretty nice item. I know already it must be a somewhat decent item that I find there. I know it can't be just some stuff I don't need. Oh, we took some falling damage here. And that I find at least a tiny bit unfortunate. That it spoils the loot a bit, and the game got more accessible already in some areas. That I wouldn't say it's not a disaster or anything, but it's just a minor detail. Dark Souls loses a bit of its mysterious character when you find stuff. And often you find like a corpse, and the loot is not that satisfying. It's sometimes just, what do I want to call it, like a leaf, some herb or so you find. You think, okay, I can just find these herb in the wild, or I find like some meat or so. I can just kill a boar or so and get the same loot. I don't need a corpse somewhere luring me there. And then it's just some underwhelming piece of meat that I find. There are some rare crafting materials, and sometimes it's not even rare when you find it. It's just, okay, I can just find it everywhere. Same with this place. I know all these items I find here will be these souls of a lost soldier equivalents here. So it's a rune, a golden rune 1. Maybe this is then a golden rune 2 or so, or another golden rune 1. Let me just try to jump up here. What is it? It's a golden rune 1. And this is... oh, we have to move past this because he explodes. This is a golden rune 1. Surprise. See what I mean? It's just, you find so much loot here, but you already know it's a golden rune 5. That's, of course, it's amazing to find these. These are basically just level ups, or souls if you want. Runes as they are here called. That is kind of cool, but I know already what these are. That is, takes a bit away the mystery what this can be. And I find that really unfortunate. It was a golden rune 3. Yeah, we don't need. I don't have to pick up everything here because we won't need it. But that is a thing, and all the other stuff definitely makes this game more accessible for new players. And but it also changes a bit the design philosophy of the Souls games in of itself. And that is a bit unfortunate. Like, it does not become... It's not like that... This game is basically Dark Souls 4, but definitely you see that it wants to be a bit more friendly for people new to the franchise. And don't want to scare players away too much. And you can also adjust your difficulty by just adding these wolves, which I, for whatever reason, can't summon here in this area. But if I lure them fast enough, far enough into this direction, I might be able to use it or not. And this stuff sometimes feels a bit, yeah, let's call it random. That makes sense. Well, not random, but like it's a weird mix in my opinion. It's not a big deal. Don't get me wrong. Like, this is just a really nitpicky minor detail I'm trying to make here, a really minor point, but it definitely is noticeable in the game that it wants to be more accessible, but I also have to admit it's still a very difficult game. So it's not like you have these wolves and suddenly everything is just absolutely easy. So here, for example, I found a weapon, which is kind of rare, but if we go and further and find like some other corpse on the field, it might be just a very, very simple item that we might find there. Be careful to not spoil too much here. And that is, yeah, I wouldn't say that it's a big criticism or problem. But some people might find this game a bit too streamlined in these regards and miss maybe what was a huge charming point for Dark Souls, that it was not that streamlined in the past. And I guess it got more streamlined over time, and now just reached this state here. That is not bad, because it's good when players can play this. There should not be too much gatekeeping, but with unnecessary stuff. But I feel like they could have done some of the stuff a bit more elegantly, in my opinion. I would say that this doesn't diminish the fun of the game. It's still pretty challenging, still as a game. But like this corpse, this might be a smithing stone, which is a great reward. But just imagine you are now 60 hours into the game and you find like a smithing stone that you don't need. You think, awesome. Could have just found like a cooler item here. it's just unfortunate that the loot is sometimes not that rewarding in this game. To just find another rune, another smithing stone, another other thing that I don't need. And yeah, that in my opinion. Here I can also show you another merchant. Look at him. He plays a song, which is kind of cool. And he has just, you can just purchase stuff here. I can just sell stuff here. If I would want to. And there's nothing else I can do. There's no dialogue. So just to conclude this. And he looks exactly the same. Just that his head is now brown and not red. And he plays a bit on this really cool looking instrument. So yeah, this point is a hard one to make for me. And notice I struggle a bit really putting, really expressing it here on the fly. Like, a little bit charm of Dark Souls is lost. And this is, in my opinion, also a price of that you have to pay due to having this an open world game. Now that we found the map, you see how massive this is now. It got, you see that this map now got quite bigger. And you can go everywhere almost at the beginning. So there are very little limitations. And we also notice that here is a start island, by the way, where you started and died. And yeah, you just see, this is already pretty massive. I haven't seen everything of this yet. And there's still so much more to see. And you can go already everywhere. But at the same time, the curse of this is that you have to fill it with content, a lot of content. And then some of the content that you implement into the game suddenly becomes less focused and maybe very sometimes repetitive. And I would have preferred if the experience of the game would just be more condensed, more focused again. But I know that also a lot of people, I'm not a huge gamer when it comes to open world games. That are not games that I often play, rarely. I do play those, and I prefer the classic Dark Souls level or world design approach where everything is connected. And maybe that's a good point to show you the castle, though. There might be a problem. So let me just show you the screen in a moment. While I load this here, I have to do a loading screen. This might be otherwise a spoiler. Let me just load my other save game really quick. I just give you here the be right back screen. Just to prevent you from spoiling, because I'm in a very late area already with my main character. He will be pretty over-leveled for this area, not gonna lie, but let me just see. Where do I have to go? Somewhere over here. You can't see it right now, but we will just visit this castle that we have seen there at the beginning. And from there I just show you how like these big set pieces might work. We just hope I took the right... Yeah, this is the right place. So here I can take my little torch out. And yeah, this is like now a set piece. I can't use my horse here. And he already noticed the enemies about my presence. And a lot of things go terribly wrong. And I also kill them with one hit. So, reduce our Estus amount here a bit. And then, yeah, you get up into the set piece here. And you see, oh no, there's an enemy. And he throws a firebomb. But here's maybe loot, which I already looted. And I have to escape and maybe find a way to get up there to punish him for this audacity. And oh no, enemies appear here. Like, if you would close your eyes, everything here would be pretty much like Dark Souls again. And that is really, really strange. Like, I could sneak to this guy here that is luckily enough turning around now. Could sneak behind him and just backstab him. And yeah, then there might be an item and so on. And then we have this, yeah, this castle that we have to explore, and we maybe have to we maybe have to find a key here to open a certain door, and so on and so forth. And maybe now we can get our revenge here from this guy, or against these dudes. Just yeah, destroy him completely. So, but you get the point. This now feels like a lot. You also see iframes, which is a thing I really hate in this game. Enemies get far too many iframes when standing up, for example, or from a backstep or so, climbing down a ladder. Pretty annoying, in my opinion. Very unnecessary. And yeah, then we can maybe move here and circumvent certain places. I don't want to spoil you too much of this area, but you get the point. If you would not know that this is Elden Ring, you would think that it's like a Dark Souls 3 DLC or something. It's just so similar, just with the difference that everything in this game is named differently. This is in functionality an Estus flask. And this is a purple moss clump. Don't want to show you too much of the late game stuff. But you get the point. This is a firebomb, now called firepot. These are throwing knives, now called throwing daggers. I think maybe they were also called throwing daggers in the previous games. Yeah, the fireball is called flame sling, and so on and so forth. But everything else is just basically Dark Souls. If we compare this to Bloodborne, there we also have that it's not called Dark Souls or whatever, and it's just far in the future or so. But in this game, in Dark Souls, the basic game mechanic changed quite a lot. And this didn't happen here in this game. Like, the basic game mechanic of Elden Ring is so similar to Dark Souls 3. Like, for example, in Bloodborne, you had these trick weapons, so the combat felt differently. Suddenly, there's one shield just for the joke of it in the game, but you basically don't use it. You use, like, a blunderbuss or whatever at the beginning. And you can parry enemies with it, or there's a pendant to parry, get the visceral attacks, as they were called. And stuff like this, it is still a Souls-like, and still very similar to Dark Souls, but it's also very different at the same time, and the setting is also completely different at the same time. Well, this game really feels like the company lost their IP of Dark Souls, and now makes like the spiritual successor to it, and it's called Elden Ring. Somewhat similar to Koji Igarashi making Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, which is basically the spiritual successor of Castlevania Symphony of the Night. It's Bloodstained is Castlevania. It just the character looks different and it's named differently, but it's basically a Castlevania game, and that is pretty much similar with this game too. It does a few things different, has some interesting ideas, and it has this open world idea tacked to everything, but it still is, in its core, Dark Souls. Like, the game can't deny this detail. This game, Elden Ring, is Dark Souls 4, basically, just named differently. It's kind of interesting. The question is it a good Dark Souls 4? And I would say, yes, it's a pretty good Dark Souls 4. But it feels a bit strange that it is not Dark Souls 4, but everything is named differently. That, in my opinion, feels really strange. So I just loaded up in the old save game here again. I think I showed you like a lot of my points of critique already. You also see, like, now that we are back into this open world area again, like, I wouldn't say it's lifeless. There's always stuff to do, and you find interesting points of interest. But still, if you just look at this, it looks relatively empty already in this section, and this just slows down the pacing of the game by quite a bit. Of course, there we find a ruin. Here there's, of course, another site of grace already, which we can take. Have to be careful, don't want to spoil something here. So we just ride up into the other direction again, and yeah, not much is going on, and a lot of this game is really exploring. And if you're into this, you will, I guess, really like the game, because I would say, compared to a lot of other open world games, that is one of the better ones, and it does some of the areas absolutely phenomenal. I think really good open world areas. There are some areas that are just okay or decent, some are just good, some are really good. But still, I would say there is no catastrophe here when it comes to the open world elements of the game. Like, overall, the game does simply a pretty good job at a lot of those elements, and that is pretty awesome that it managed to do this. But if you don't like open world stuff, it still can feel like a bit like busy work, collecting all those berries and materials instead of just buying them for souls which you'll later drown in. And you can teleport around anyway. Even in Dark Souls 3 you can also teleport from every bonfire. Like, it's not really a new feature here of this game. Or it's not like it wasn't in other games. Since Dark Souls 2, the option exists that you can teleport to basically every bonfire fight. Dark Souls 2 also had a lot of bonfires. So it's not like this is like a drastic change in bonfire placement. But as said, this huge world, maybe also to slowly conclude my video here, comes at a price. And I guess one price is definitely performance on a technical side for now, but also repetitiveness with some of the bosses. Also, some elements becoming more generic. Also streamlining some other elements, like making loot a bit too predictable in my opinion. Because you often know, okay, this is interesting, and you explore and you find this crazy small thing, like this crazy well-hidden item somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and I think, oh, awesome, I found that, and then it's just, I don't know, just some herb, and you think, oh, awesome, I don't need that, I even don't know what it's for. Very disappointing again. Sometimes some elements are not that elegant anymore, and they definitely want to try to make it more, I wouldn't say easy, because the game is still very difficult and you will die a lot and you will have frustrating moments too in this game, but it's more accessible in a way, which you can say is a good thing. But in Dark Souls it's kind of special, because in good old Dark Souls the accessibility is not necessarily, yeah, it's not something that the series is known for. And we found another thing. So this is a crystal lizard pondom, by the way, in case you wonder. And this is, in my opinion, yeah, a bit unfortunate but understandable. Like, this a really small, see this as a really small criticism of the new design philosophy of this, and potentially watering down some elements that were done, let's say, more uniquely in this game. And some can see this uniqueness as a design flaw that needs to be streamlined, but some also see in it like this being a characteristic of the game itself, a bit of its charm. And I wouldn't say that this game has no charm, but it's just different, and that you definitely should know. Also, another thing maybe I also want to address is delayed attacks. Every enemy in this game, especially bosses, have like several delayed attacks, and if you're not good at dodging those delayed attacks, like the dodge times are sometimes so weird in this game that it adds, for people like me, an additional layer of difficulty that can be quite frustrating, because it feels a bit like, I don't know, the enemy has like an starting attack and it just takes forever, and then he continues into a very fast 7-hit combo or something. And if you don't dodge the first hit, then some hits of the later combo will hit you and kill you maybe, and then it gets frustrating fast. And if you have trouble like me learning the timings of delayed attacks, you'd die over and over just to one, oh, it's always the same attack, and you just struggle with it, and it feels really frustrating. And it would be okay if it would be just one boss, but it's basically, I don't know, almost every boss has something like this, and this makes it not feel that great. In addition, as said, some bosses are repetitive, because in this area they seem all unique, but if you find another area in the game, you fight the same boss again, and sometimes a second time, a third time, maybe even a fourth time, and then I think it's maybe a bit too much of reuse, and people would have hoped that they would not do this. In addition, some of the bosses here are also very easy and not that interesting. Like, it suffers a bit the mechanical problems of bosses in Dark Souls 2, which is also a very big game and it needed a ton of bosses. But as a result, many of the Dark Souls 2 bosses are also very boring bosses, not that interesting, not that great. That is very unfortunate. I would still say mechanically all the bosses in the game are probably better than the worst Dark Souls 2 bosses, but still there are some similarities where you think, wait, this is a normal enemy later in the game, why is this a boss? I mean, Dark Souls 1 did this too, but this game really does it quite a lot. And it even starts with one, like, we have fought this soldier at the beginning, and he's just a normal enemy in the game. It's not a boss, actually, and that, in my opinion, is, like, a bit sad to see, considering how well some of the bosses and other details were done in the past, in the previous iterations. It's hard to not criticize something if you have seen it better by the same developer in a game that is clearly related to this game. Like, Dark Souls 2 is, or Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3, the last big Dark Souls game, is definitely a landmark, same as Bloodborne. And we have seen them doing NPCs and other details much better in previous games. And in Dark Souls 3, they even managed to really reduce the reuse of enemies as bosses and reusing bosses multiple times, or using, let's say, standard world enemies, and suddenly they once were a boss and later they become just a normal enemy. To a certain extent. I mean, it's kind of cool in Dark Souls 1, where you see, okay, I struggled with this when this guy was a boss and now he's just a normal enemy. And this also can give you a feeling of becoming more powerful in the game, and can be quite cool. But if you do it too much, then you think, kind of lazy. And with Dark Souls 3 we already saw you can do it differently, and this game basically, could say, goes a bit back to the roots. So the game has definitely some weaknesses. It's not perfect, as said. Even the dungeons, the design or the layout is always a bit different, but it consists of pretty much always the same assets, and it works always the same. Like, you go through the dungeon, there is like one path that leads to a treasure chamber, one path that leads to a lever. You have to pull the lever, then the boss door opens, you return to the to the beginning of the dungeon. There you go through the boss door, fight the boss, and the dungeon is completed. That this pattern gets repetitive if it's overused a lot. And let's say the first 10 dungeons, it's not that big of a problem and you see some variety, but the 11th, 12th dungeon, suddenly you notice, oh boy, now I have to fight, instead of this guy once, I have to fight 2 guys of this at the same time. And this enemy is clearly not designed to be fought 2 times at the same time, and the fight suddenly becomes frustrating. And the difficulty is not well done by designing an interesting boss, just by making bosses more spongy, more powerful, or hitting harder, or just place multiple of them into a boss arena at once. And that is often a problem. Another problem is that some bosses are really good at punishing you. Of course, there is the legendary heal punch. Like, I guess the better bosses in the Dark Souls series all had like a special attack dedicated to, okay, the player backs off, and once he's low health, he wants to heal. And as soon as he presses the heal button, he attacks you. There are some bosses in the game that are really good at this, and it's really annoying because they're so good at it. But that in of itself is not a problem. But it becomes a problem when the boss is also good at punishing you for attacking. I have a certain boss in mind, like a certain knight boss, that appears in one place, and later also as, I wouldn't say a normal enemy, but yeah, somewhat a normal enemy. And this guy is just so annoying to fight because he's so good at punishing you for hitting him. And that makes it little fun. So you can only hit once, even with a fast weapon, and then you already have to dodge like 6 times in a row till you can hit again. And this makes the boss fight, pushes you, makes it very passive for you. It pushes you in a very defensive position, and it's not fun if you just always have to attack once and then dodge like a 6-hit combo and then hit once again, maybe. And then he can still add like an additional attack to it to punish your hit there. And you feel, especially if you fight this boss early, and you can do this pretty early on, it feels really frustrating and boring, the fight, as a result, because you can't take those risks due to you having low health and dying really fast. As a result, I think they overdid it with some bosses there in their design, and they become like difficult but in a boring way, and that is not a good thing. However, there are some absolutely phenomenal bosses in this game too. It sounds pretty negative now, but there are some bosses that are absolutely fantastic. Presentation wise, I think a lot of bosses are also pretty cool, but of course some of the bosses also don't look that cool and don't play that well. So as said, as in there are some, let's say, call them Dark Souls 2 bosses in this game. It's sadly like this. Definitely one of the prizes for filling such a large world, and as said, this is a tiny fraction of the world with content. And same goes for some NPCs, but of course, besides some very generic NPCs, you also have some absolutely fantastic and amazing NPCs with interesting quest lines. However, there are also quest lines that are just fetch quests and feel very bad, like classic open world boring generic quests. Some of them feel a bit like this, where it's just like go somewhere, talk to the NPC, then go somewhere else, get this item, talk to this NPC, return to main NPC, end. It's a bit, some quests are a bit like this, which is okayish, but as said, it feels again like the curse of having this open world tag to the game. I just showed you this castle here, which we can't see from here. Let me just move out a bit. Which we can't see from here. Can we now see it? Oh, I have an idea. We have fast travel. We can definitely see it from the first step bonfire. We just load there. If we just put this castle and then I don't know, put a valley behind it, maybe a swamp, and then another interesting place like an ice area, like this castle over there. That is where we just showed it from loaded the other character and showed you a bit of it. If you would just put it together like Dark Souls, I personally would not miss this open world here. At least if it would be well connected as in Dark Souls 1. Like in Dark Souls 3, the game became a lot more linear, sadly. And this game here, now, due to the open world character, allows you to really... I could go to this castle, or I could go to a completely different castle. It would be possible to just continue somewhere completely else. I probably would have to deal with stronger enemies, but the possibility exists, and the game is very not linear. And the open world is definitely a benefit for that. But in my opinion, you could have also done this in the classical approach, and then you would not need to travel and walk around so much, and so on and so forth. I feel like the exploring at the beginning is really fun, but as you progress later and later into the game, you start to... The incentive to just play, to fight against small mobs or so just reduces further and further, and you just run through with your horse, collect all the items, and just want to move on to the next big set piece, because this is where the meat is. This is where the game, at least for me, is most interesting. And as a result, I have to admit, I'm not 100% sure if I personally would have needed the open world. But if you like open world play, then you might have a different opinion on this, because this comes, I guess, down to taste. I still have, even as a player who really disliked, or not dislike is a strong word. I'm simply not that into open world games. Even I have a really good time here. So they definitely done a phenomenal good job. So my criticism here is a bit nitpicky, I have to admit. But I hope you still can put it into the right context here. Because I think for critique, it is necessary to also talk about those nitpicky designs. This game got 10 out of 10 ratings. I don't want to criticize those, but for me personally, to give this game a 10 out of 10, technically it would need to be in a much better state. Like a game with these performance issues can't be a 10 out of 10 game in my opinion. It's just unnecessary. It doesn't become unplayable, but it's annoying. And that should not be in the game, and I expect that software runs accordingly. And this even has frame stutters and frame pacing problems on, like, I don't know, a $3,000 computer. That should not be the case, because the game looks gorgeous because of the art style, not because of this graphical fidelity. And as a result, the game should simply run a lot smoother, in my opinion. I've seen other open world games doing it much better. The UI is also okayish, but it's also not the greatest thing. Like this symbol here, the doors of Durin to the left, that you see there above square off. Like, why is it not as a symbol below the stamina bar? Why is it there? Like, there's some strange decisions here, and it's also pretty classic. Like, it's basically as UI design as you know it from all the other Souls games. And other games maybe have some more interesting ideas for that. It works, it's functional, but it's also not that special. But even the lore, I have to admit, I know that like Dark Souls always did this. There are different factions with different goals, and then you had like a good ending and a bad ending, or you could even question if the good ending is really the good ending and is the bad ending really the bad ending. That existed in Dark Souls forever, and I haven't seen the ending of this game yet. I assume it's the same here, because I basically get pretty much the same story beats I got in previous Souls games. Maybe there might be some twists and interesting things, and I think the game has more endings than the previous games. Still, I think so far what we've gotten and what I've learned about the game, the world, and the lore, it sounds often quite familiar. Like, there's not much that really surprises me. Still, there are some interesting NPCs, some interesting locations, and some interesting details about the lore. But still, it feels like there is like this basic schematic of how to make Dark Souls is the foundation of this game. Just everything is named differently, and that still feels a bit strange. Why do they name it Elden Ring when it's still so close to Dark Souls, just with an open world tag to it? And that, in my opinion, is a bit strange. I personally would rate it still also pretty high, especially if the technical issues are solved. I would definitely rate it like a 9 out of 10 or so. For me personally, it's a really, really good game. At least for now. Maybe a bit lower when I complete it, or maybe higher. I think I definitely would not go higher than that, because, as mentioned, the game has still quite a lot of flaws, like repetitiveness of enemies, and so on and so forth. And some boss fights are also not that great. Some boss fights are pretty great, and some boss fights are great on paper, but have some annoying element to it. It's basically the same as in, I don't know, Dark Souls 3 or in some of the other Souls games, where there are some bosses that are just great. There are some bosses that would be great, but they just added something that is really annoying to the boss. And that I'm not the hugest fan of. Like, I don't know, bosses that can heal themselves, or I don't know what. It's just pretty annoying stuff that feels a bit unnecessary, or an unnecessary long and annoying and repetitive path to actually the boss. Like I said, you had these statues here, but in some later bosses you really have long ways to the bosses again, and it's really annoying. And you ask yourself, why did they design this like this? Why did they put these statues in the game when they don't use them later on? So some of the great things fall a bit apart in the later sections, sadly, of the game. And that is why I personally feel now that it's definitely, for me, not a 10 out of 10 game. I would rate it so far a bit lower than this. Still, this is criticizing on the very highest level. Don't get me wrong, I think it's a fantastic game. It's a good game that a lot of people will enjoy, and it deserves its spot as potentially contender as Game of the Year for a lot of people. And I wouldn't be surprised if it... If we will see it, for example, on the Game Awards as Game of the Year, but who knows? It definitely has the potential to reach that. And I think went just far over time, and really I hope to make this video much, much shorter, but I definitely failed. I have this little piece of paper here next to me, and just want to check if I overlooked something that I might not have mentioned. Yeah, I mentioned the UI hints like that. It could be more elegant. I showed you the weird summoning stuff, like, which also helps out new players that struggle with bosses. You can summon, you can even upgrade these wolves and make them stronger, or you can find other, it's almost like Pokemon, collect them all, but yeah, you can upgrade those and they get more powerful then and are more helpful. And they don't make some bosses easy. Some bosses are really weak to those, and there are bosses that just don't care if they are summoned, so you still have a pretty difficult game. It's not the absolute easy mode, but it makes it a bit easier. It helps you out a little bit compared to when you don't do this. And Dark Souls always was like this, that you can basically define the difficulty of the game yourself. And I think this is basically everything I have to say so far. If I don't find anything worse on this list here. No, I don't. So I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you, people, for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little review here, or this little, no, it's not a review, this little first impressions, this little critique of what I've played so far. And I will continue playing it on Twitch if you want to join and see some of the later sections of the game. Then maybe check out my Twitch channel. Links for all the stuff is in the description. I also have like my main channel. I only do Tolkien stuff. So Lord of the Rings, Hobbit, Silmarillion, and so on, related lore videos and analysis videos and so on. Also, the new TV show is slightly covered there. At least the stuff we know to this point. And everything basically Tolkien related. Potentially also games, so if the Gollum game comes out, you will find information on that there too. I hope if you're into that you check it out. That would be nice. If you're into gaming, my gaming stuff will be on this channel. It was a bit light on content for quite some time now, because I was really busy on the main channel for some time. And now I want to be more active a bit here too in parallel, and give you my impressions. I maybe might make a guide for a boss or something here later on. But for now, I need to complete the game first, so let me do this. Also, that's a final remark, this game is really massive. Like, you can spend 100 hours easily on this game, if not even more. And that is quite a lot for a Souls game, but I see still a lot of potential in it. So I'm not sure if there's anything else to say, except for leave a like, leave maybe a comment, tell me how you liked the game so far, what you think of this, of my points of criticism, of my praise that I have definitely, for example, for the horse, that has a double jump, which is fantastic, and the horse is really fun in the game. And also many other elements. The combat is fluid and works pretty well. Some nice additions to that. The art style is fantastic. I also like the music. So there's a lot of good things in the game. I hope I could also express this a bit, even though I focused a bit on the negative side of things and rambled about a different design philosophy that is a bit behind this game, which some might see as unfortunate. But whatever. Thank you, people, again for watching. See you next time. Goodbye.